We're building an 800-gallon cube aquarium. What the? Let's go! Okay, we're really starting from the beginning on this one, gritting wood. And I just want to show you this real quick because we've got these big 4x4s here, which I don't normally get, but we're going to do a different design, and it's basically just going to be for the style, for the look of the tank. I think it's going to look nicer. So we're really going to do this 6x6 800-gallon cube up. And yeah, here's the first thing of wood. We got 4x4s, 2x10s, and 2x4s. All right, now I just need to unload all this and get it over to the work area. So we're getting the bases ready for the 2 cube tanks for the 3x3 tank. Just needed to paint the stand, and that's ready to go, and I'll install the door back on. And for the 6x6 tank, I am painting all the foundation boards. I've done one side of those, get ready to do the other side, and then of course we have some more right here. And as soon as we get these all painted up, we can talk about the design and start the build. So this is a build that I'm truly excited for. I've always wanted a big cube aquarium, and I think a 6x6 by 3 foot, 800-gallon is going to hit the spot perfect. So as you can see, we've got the base down. It's just 2x6s stacked on top of each other. Basically, this is to give us something to screw down into and to give us a distribution of weight. You can see there's just a few screws in it right now. That's just tacked together. There'll be more screws. But I left it like that while I was finalizing the design. There's a few different ways to build this, and let me take you outside and show you the wood I got. So the reason I want to show you the wood is because normally I wouldn't use 4x4s like you see over here, but I have a particular style in mind for this aquarium, for this cube aquarium, and it's not that these are required for strength or anything like that. This is purely just a design aesthetic. It's a way I'm going to build the tank. The 4x4 post going all the way from the base all the way to the top of the tank on all the corners is going to allow me to frame it in such a way that's going to look pretty cool. And then of course the meat of the build is 2x6s and 2x4s. And then the last thing I want to mention here right at the very beginning of the build is obviously placement. So you see we got it lined up. We want to leave that 3.5–4 feet in between this and the lagoon aquarium. We need to leave space over here for the plumbing to go down the back, because this will be the back wall here where the plumbing will be, and these 3 walls of the cube will all be glass. Then of course just spacing with the other tanks and with the other new tank, which will be over here. So spacing is a big deal. Figuring out the shape you want to do, and then figuring out which style of build. And with the 4x4s, sort of just imagine on all 4 corners those 4x4s coming all the way up to the very top of the build. So let's just say hypothetically 6.5 feet continuous beam, and then windows, 3 big windows framed out here, and then a framed wall in the back with plywood and fiberglass. So it's going to be something else. It's going to be an impressive build. Just one other thing I want to point out real quick is with the framing, what you're going to see is that we're going to have we're going to create a big span across. We're going to want to have this side and the far side open over there so we can slide in a big sump that I'm going to build that goes underneath. So rather than have a whole bunch of like a cross brace in the middle and another beam there, we're going to beef up the beams on the side, make them spaced more across, and bigger, thicker sister duct beams to carry that load across the length of the tank. So I think this would be a good time to show you what we got so far in the 6-foot square tank. You really can't call it a cube, while the whole tank is more than 6 feet. The part with the water is not, but at any rate, 800-gallon square tank. So let's see here. We saw the base, right? So the base here is important because what it's doing is it's taking a point load. So for here, all of this weight from the beams, actually let's take you over here where the beams are. We have the first beam up. So we have this big triple 2x6 beam, and all of its weight is being put on this point here. So if this just went directly to the floor underneath, that would be a point load. So all the weight would be on that small surface area right there. So it would just be the square amount of inches of that, and be the pounds per square inch of that. But by putting it on this base like this, it's transferring that weight out to this base. And so that's the same thing over here, here, and there's going to be 2 more beams in the middle. So the entire tank will be floated on top of these 4 tripled up beams that are all going down onto posts which are holding the load and then distributing it to the flat boards underneath, the sort of the base there. Now the reason I'm doing this is I want to create a large open space underneath the aquarium so that 1, I can easily work in there, and 2, I can move a big filter I'm going to custom build for this inside of here or move it out if need be. So it basically just makes running the aquarium a lot easier. So like over here on my 2,000 gallon, it's not easy to work under there at all. There's a lot of posts everywhere, there's limited access, it's lower. So here you can see we've got 24 inches of access instead of that might be 16 over there. So that's going to make my life a lot easier, maintaining the tank as well as getting the size filter I want in here. So what I'm going to do now is just continue with what's happened over here, which is finish putting all the down support, the posts in on each side, and then the beam across. We're going to do that on the far side, and then we're going to do it in these 2 middle beams here, and then I'll bring you back and we'll show you that. And we'll also talk about load. So we'll talk about how much weight is the aquarium going to be, live load versus dead load, and how much weight each one of these beams can support, and then also how we're going to brace all these beams. So I think this is a good point in the build to pause for a minute and discuss some of the decisions that are being made here, sort of the rhyme and reason to what's going on to get to this far. Essentially, what I'm going to be doing here is finishing off the beams all the way across and then putting the multiple layers of plywood for the bottom of the aquarium, and that's sort of the foundation of the aquarium. But I want to talk about the rhyme or reason of the decisions and go through some numbers and stuff. But before I do that, and what I'll do is I'll take the camera off and we'll go closer and I'll show you exactly what I'm talking about. But before I do that, I want to talk about the reason I don't give exact numbers and specifics on a lot of things, and that reason is because it completely depends. There's a lot of factors that go into everything. So a 2x6, what kind of 2x6? There's not just one type, right? It could be a Douglas fir, it could be a number 2 southern pine, it could be a white pine, and the thing about that is that every one of those has a completely different shear strength, just a different composition of the wood. So what they're capable of doing is completely different. So you can't use generic terms like a 2x4 or a 2x6. You have to be very specific. And then beyond that, so for example, I'm using quadruple 2x6 beams, but even that, and mine are number 2 southern pine. But even beyond that, how you connect those boards together so will affect the strength of that quadruple 2x6 beam. So in my case, they are glued and screwed with sets of screws every 10 inches. So that is going to make sure that the screw is not the limiting factor in the shear strength of the beam. But let's say you took 4 2x6s, sistered them together, and you just put a single screw every couple feet or something and no glue. Well, your beam's going to break in this scenario because all the weight's going to be like on 1 or 2 screws and nothing else. And over time, that's what's going to snap. And it's not because you had 4 2x6s. It's not even the type of 2x6s. So there's a lot of factors. Even like when you put the plywood on, are you using adhesive to glue it to every one of the beams? Are you also screwing in, all the right locations on every beam? So are you tying all the beams together with this 1.5 inch thick floor of plywood, or are you just putting some screws every once in a while? You're not using glue. Did you just use glue and not screws? Those sorts of things. So I'll walk you through, how I'm doing it, why I'm doing it this way, and what the strengths are with the way I'm doing it. So at least you have a reference point, and you can decide, do I want to go with a stronger, wood species to go further to the side of a safety factor for what I'm doing, or are you comfortable with less than that, whatever. So let me go ahead and take the camera off the tripod, show you what's going on. Okay, we're inside the aquarium, and we're going to start off with this right here. If you don't have one of these, and if you're not using it liberally to get all of these things straight, on both angles. So in this case, all 4 of these posts are plumb both directions all the way around. So that is super key. If you're not getting that done, whatever you're going to build is going to be a mess. So how did we do that? So first we just went ahead and we screwed the post into the base. We didn't worry about it being plumb yet, and then we worked on one direction at a time. First we got it plumb this direction, and we used this board right here to hold it in place, and then we got it plumb the other direction, and we used this board right here to keep that in place. And these are just, this board right here is just a guide board. I mean, it is giving a tiny little bit of strength, but this post behind it is where the real strength comes from. And over here, this is going to be part of a beam, but in of by itself, it isn't creating the strength. It's only when it's turned into a quadruple 2x6 beam, like you have over here, where you're getting the true strength of the build. So let's talk about where the strength's coming from with the foundation as we have so far. So number one is we're building these quadruple 2x6 beams. Now this right here is 110% more strong than is required. So the next level below that would be a triple 2x6 beam, again using number 2 Southern Pine. That's what these 2x6s are. And that would actually exceed the strength that's required by about 5 to 10%. So I'm always of the ilk where if I can just spend money to get 1, 2, 3, 4 more 2x6s, I can go from 5 to 10% exceeding what's required to 110%. So I'm always going to do that. So in my case, you're going to have 4 quad 2x6 beams. So as you can see, we have one here on the side that's tying in the post. And now we have these posts here, so 2, 3, and then 4 again. Now let's go to the posts. So these upright posts, what do we have here? We have a 4x4 surrounded by 2x6s and 2x4s, which is creating an enormous amount of area for the post to sit on, or for the beam to sit on. A lot of mistakes people would make is they might build something like this. They would build an aquarium stand. So an aquarium stand, you could have a single 2x4, and you can have those single 2x4 beam of the top of the stand on top of it. And because the weight of the aquarium is not that much, it's fine, it's plenty. If you did that here, you'd be taking the load that's being deflected from the beam out to these posts, and you'd be transmitting that load to a tiny little bit of surface area, which you would essentially crush this board. You would basically just slowly crush it. And of course, it's like a lot of things where it would go slowly at first and then fast once it started to basically become undermined. So all that weight would, then crush it. So in here, we have to spread that out. And then after that, once you spread it out here to where the weight's sitting, the beam is sitting on this post, you then need to spread it out at the bottom. That's why we have the big footer, the double footer there. So we want to transfer all that weight out and not put it on just one point right there. So in this case, there's a tile floor. So even though there's concrete underneath it, and the concrete could probably handle the point load from the single beam with the single post with the beam pressure being transferred to it, the tile probably can't, right? So you're going to crack the tile in a lot of places, and that's going to cause a mess. That's going to undermine what you're doing. So it's easy enough just to transfer it with the footer. Okay, and now hopping outside the tank, once we have the 4 quad 2x6 beams in place spanning this, then we're going to put 2 layers of 3/4 inch plywood, which acts to tie all those beams together. And it's going to take the live load, the weight of the aquarium, and more or less equally transfer it across all the beams, left to right, and then down to the footer. So in this case, this aquarium is going to have a live load. So let's talk about some numbers here. So in this case, the live load of this aquarium, which is the weight of the water, the sand, and the rock inside the aquarium, is going to be roughly 7,500 pounds. I just went ahead and round up to 8,000 pounds. Now a live load is load that moves, right? Like water is not perfectly still, if I'm climbing in and out, that kind of thing. A dead load would just be like the floor, like if you have a floor, it would just be the weight of the floor, the weight of an object that doesn't move, that sort of thing. So a live load is more stress on the foundation, so it's a heavier build. The second question here might be why not just put supports in the middle? Well, I'm spanning this big area on purpose because I want to create the perfect location for me to do what I want to do with the filtration and make my life easier. So because I have the luxury of just spending a little extra money to beef up the foundation, the supports, you know, I have the luxury to do that. It's not a requirement here this isn't a house, right? Like if you're building something very large, the cost becomes exponential if you don't, if you use like much bigger beams. So if you've ever done any house remodeling, let's say you have a wall, you see every 16 inches, there's 2x4s in that wall, so there's lots of sticks everywhere, and they're all joined together and they're holding up the load above it. But if you want to have a big open space, you've got to put in a big beam up there to span that big space to hold that weight up. And the reason they don't necessarily just use the beam by default is because it's more expensive than a whole bunch of 2x4s. So that's kind of your open concept space, living space is going to have a bunch of beams and more expensive, and then your smaller rooms are usually going to have just 2x4 walls. So that's the reason here. If you wanted to save money and you weren't worried about having the filtration underneath it, let's say the filtration was outside of it and maybe on the other side of a wall or something, you know, you could just throw supports in the middle and you could bring this the amount of material using here way down, because these beams are all predicated on spanning this 6 feet, you know, span. That's the whole point of this. If I didn't have that, if I could just put like a post every 2 feet or something like that, I could just use like single 2x6s and, you know, they'd be so well supported, you know, I could have a whole bunch of them, be just like anything else. So this is specifically built because I want to have a bunch of open space underneath it to be able to get a big custom built filter that I'm going to make slid in there and interact with that filter easily. That's why a lot of my tanks I build wetland upflow filters, because I can interact with them standing up from the top. I don't have to climb underneath. So that's the purpose of this build. But just real quick, so like a single 2x6 spanning this distance here, it's going to have like a theoretical strength of like 600 pound shear strength, which it's going to be less than that in practicality, because that's like under a perfect situation. So not nearly enough, right? Because we got 8,000 pounds, we'd be supporting, in that scenario, you know, we'd be supporting 2,400 pounds. You double that up, and it basically doubles that shear strength to 1,200. Again, only going up to 4,800 across all of them, and all the beams. Again, not factoring in the plywood and everything, but just trying to keep it simple. So again, you're only half of what you need. You triple it up. Now you're meeting your expectations. You're a little over. So instead of 8,000, you're like supporting around 9,600 pounds. So, you know, gives you a tiny little safety factor. But that's going to be still iffy, right? Like that's kind of still that's like, if it's perfectly just sitting there and you got the live load in there, but you're climbing in and out, there's something like that, you might find it's a little spongy. Then you go up to the quad 2x6s, and the load goes way up. It just crushes it by a lot. It's not even close. It goes up to like 16, 17,000 pounds. So, and we're only at 8, so we're far exceeding it, and that's where you get something that's incredibly stiff and rigid, and that's what we're looking for here, for just that small extra cost and screws, glue, and 2x6s. So as you can see, the design of the build and the materials used completely affects the materials, how much material, the design of the build, and the cost. It's 100% custom, and it's 100% dependent on how you want to do this. So this same build right here, somebody not worried about spanning this open space, you know, they could put 3 posts across here if they want, you know, and have all kinds of strength. So, but at any rate, what I'm going to do is I'm going to finish all these quad beams, get them set up on the posts, and get this ready for plywood. And that'll be, once we get the plywood on, that'll sort of be the end of the base, and then we're building up. But let me get all these beams done. Okay, so we want to keep all the sawdust outside, so I brought over my portable saw bench, aka my Tundra, and it's time to go ahead and get this cut, and then I'll show you inside how it's going to lay on a support beam, and then we'll measure and we'll get the other piece cut and get the first layer of plywood down on the tank. So just real quick before I get into showing you one of these quad 2x6 beams being built, is there might be a part in this video where it looks like I'm using a circular saw and cutting plywood without my safety glasses on. That's just a pure figment of your imagination. It's the way the light went off the glare of the lens. It's just the very clear, hard to spot safety glasses I have. It's one of those, probably all those things. Don't go back and double check or anything, just trust me on this. I was fully safe at all times. I was too lazy to go upstairs and get them. That's why I never take anything upstairs if it's not right around here. All right, enough of that. Let me get you a close-up. We're going to build one of these quad 2x6 beams. Let's go. Okay, this is how we do it. We get the first 2x6 all lined up on right on top of the post on the far side. Bring it across and lined up over here, and then we've used the 5-pound hammer and we just tamped it down, make sure it's flat, and then now we're going to go ahead and screw in from the side, and we'll screw into the guides down here, and this will be the first board that we'll start building off of. Okay, now that that first board is in place, that's our guide that we're going to build the beam off of. We go ahead and put a layer of glue on the second beam, and then I'm going to use the 5-pound hammer to straighten it up, tamp it down, and mush it against this board. We'll go ahead and throw the clamps on, and then we'll start screwing them together. We'll start sistering them up. Okay, there's the second board in place. You can see it's sistered up, so the glue is in between those two boards. We have a clamp to hold in place, and you can see we have sets of screws every 7, 8, 9 inches apart, which is way more than required, but for a couple bucks, across the whole build, I can make sure that the sheer strength of this beam doesn't come down to the strength of a screw. It comes down to the truly sistered up 4 2x6s. So we want to take away any limiting factors like not using enough screws, not using glue, and having the boards separate and have a screw or an individual board become a point of failure. And of course, it's just time to do that 2 more times. So I'll go ahead, finish this beam, build this other beam, and then we'll take a quick look at the completed foundation of the aquarium, and then we'll start putting on the first layer of plywood for the base. Looks like the sharks are excited for the new tank build over here. But yeah, we got the foundation done. This thing is a beast. I mean, 110% stronger than required. Is rigid. It's strong. It's a monster. I don't know if I've ever built anything this rigid before. I mean, it is. I can do anything to this and jump up and down. But the key thing is I did it all because look at that. Look how easy it is to access that big open space underneath, so I can do anything I want filter-wise. And I've got a really cool filter design in mind. Of course, I'll be building myself, so it'll be custom fit or custom designed just for what I'm going to keep in here, and I'm looking forward to that. So now, something I've been looking forward to for quite a while. It's time to go ahead and get the first layer of plywood on here. So we're going to end up with 2 3/4-inch layers, so 1.5 inches of plywood, which is sufficient to transfer the weight from the gaps over to all the supports, and then the supports push the weight out down to the posts, and then the posts push the weight out along the footer along the bottom. And that's the whole deal, is about taking the 8,000 pounds of weight and distributing it as equally as possible across the tank, spreading it out, and targeting the strongest points of the build, which of course are these posts. So it's all about taking that weight and distributing it out to those posts and down. Okay, this looks like a pretty good place to stop for part 1 of the 800-gallon cube build. You know, this 6 foot by 6 foot by, I don't know, what is it, 38, 40 inches tall, 800-gallon aquarium. We've got a very solid base. We're allowing ourselves to do anything we want with the filtration because we put in these massive beams and these massive posts to span that entire 6 foot space inside of there and transfer that weight out to the sides. This thing is super rigid. We've got the first layer of plywood cut for the base, and I'm going to start gluing and screwing that down, and then I think in the next video we'll put that second layer of plywood on the base. Then we'll start framing out all of these big windows around me, and then on the back wall over here we'll build that back wall, we'll line it with plywood, we'll drill out the bulkheads for the drains and the returns, And then, like I said, we'll have the framing done, and that'll get us all the way up to where we start doing fiberglassing, epoxy painting, and glass install. So the build's moving along quickly, and I can't wait to get this thing running because, of course, we have awesome livestock going in here, and we have an awesome filter build that goes with this. It's sort of a two-in-one, a DIY tank build and a filter build, all in one. As always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys in part 2 very soon. Thanks.